we'll get this thing started. First of all, I'd like to do a couple of things. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the indigenous peoples of North America and their hereditary lands on which, under normal circumstances, our clubs meet. The indigenous peoples of North America have looked after the land for since time immemorial, and we appreciate the fact that they allow us to do what we do, sometimes on their territorial land. So thank you. And this next little bit's in French, so I hope, just bear with me, the Anglophones, bear with me. And Jean-Louis, please excuse my my poor pronunciation and my terrible accent, but bonsoir mes amis. Puisque cette session sera entièrement en anglais, je vous demanderai si vous avez des questions sur le sujet ou la présentation de DG Tom, que vous les dirigez vers PDG Lise d'Outresac dans la boîte de discussion. Au bas de l'écran, vous verrez la boîte de discussion. Si vous cliquez dessus, l'écran latéral apparaîtra. Là où il est dit tout le monde, veuillez cliquer et trouver le nom de Lise et vous pourrez ensuite discuter avec elle en privé. Merci beaucoup de nous rejoindre. How did I do, Lise?
Merci.
How did I do?
Yep. Très correct.
Good,
Merci.
good. For those of you who didn't understand that, I basically told our francophone guests that because the session is in English, that if they had any questions or comments regarding Tom's presentation, that they could put their questions in the chat box privately to Lise, and she would put them over to Tom. So, good evening, Carol. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the evening, District Governor Tom Gump from District 5950 is passionate about growing Rotary membership. His tips for attracting and retaining members and his work in forming new cause-based Rotary clubs were both featured in Rotary magazine cover stories. He was one of 20 North American Rotary leaders selected by immediate past President Mark Maloney and Rotary International membership staff to participate in the new Club Development Summit, and is a Zone 29 Innovative Club advocate. Tom was the visionary founder of the first ever Rotary Club for veterans in the world. He also co-founded the first Rotary Club in the world formed to end human trafficking. He now helps form similar clubs throughout the world. He speaks frequently about membership at zone, pets, district and club events in the US and abroad, including as a breakout panelist at Rotary International Conventions. Fellow Rotarians, friends, please welcome District Governor Tom Gump.
Thank you very much. It's so great to be here. Thank you, Bill, for the invite, and thank you for all coming today. I'm just going to share my screen here, and we will go ahead and get started. This is my all-time favorite subject, talking about cause-based clubs. And we're going to, you've done everything you can as assistant Rotary coordinators and as district membership chairs to make your clubs vibrant. You've changed meeting times, places, formats, and then the other tool you can have is you could start clubs. Now, what club do you want to start? I prefer to start a cause-based club. Why? Cause-based clubs, and I use this quote by David McNally from his book, Even Eagles Need a Push. The most motivational force in the world is a cause, and that's so true. So there's 5 things you should be asking yourself tonight, and we're going to talk about each of these. why start a cause-based club, how to start a club, what lessons did we learn from the clubs that we started so you don't have to repeat the mistakes that we've made, what are the keys to success in all of these clubs, and a question we get asked an awful lot, where are the opportunities? What kinds of clubs should I start? So first, and one of the most important things is why. Cause-based clubs help Rotary grow quicker. You think about it, the last club that we just chartered had 46 members in it. If we tried to bring 46 individual members into our current existing club, that would take a long time. But if you actually add clubs, you have to have a minimum of 20. That grows Rotary a lot quicker. Also, it retains members longer. The average Rotarian leaves within the first 2 years. And why do they leave? They leave for a number of reasons, but they don't really have that passion to stay. You know, Rotary broke a record last year. In its 115-year history, it brought in more members than it ever had before, over 150,000. Unfortunately, Rotary broke another record, and that is it lost more members than it ever had. And that number was greater than the 150,000 it brought in. So if we give people a reason to stay and a passion, and we give them grant dollars and an opportunity to work on a cause that they really care about, they're going to stay more than 2 years. And by that time, they'll have the lifelong friendships that we all have with each other. And it works really well. It also attracts younger members. You know, a lot of folks from my generation, what we were told is go out and serve. So what did I do? I joined my Rotary Club and I pick up trash along the highway. We rake leaves in people's yards who can't rake their own. We help make sandwiches for the hungry. But I'll tell you, it's really hard to get a millennial to go pick up trash along the highway. They want to have great impact and they want to have it in an area that they care about and that they choose, whether it be ending human trafficking, serving veterans, empowering women. They want to choose it and they want to focus in that area. It also reaches out in our community. And those of you who belong to a traditional club like I do know that most Rotary clubs meet Monday through Friday at a hotel or at a country club, and they meet at breakfast or they meet at lunch. And usually people who are members of that traditional club, they usually work in the area or they live in the area. But I could tell you as just an example, in our Veterans Club pre-COVID, we had people driving an hour and a half to 2 hours to come to a meeting. That's the kind of reach you have in your community with these cause-based clubs. It also gives you an opportunity unparalleled for partnerships because there are other causes and other organizations working on causes for the clubs that you are starting. And it's a great way to pick up members because you can get their mailing list too. And really, if you're partnering up on a cause, there's just more people doing it and you have a greater impact than you would as just the cause alone or the club alone. So we're going to talk about now, since we talked about why, we're going to talk about how to form a cause-based club. And this is going to be a fun presentation because we actually put together real life photographs and we're using our Rotary Club of Minnesota Veterans as the example. And these aren't stock photos. These are actual photographs of people who helped form the club and people who join the club. So it makes it a little bit fun for that purpose. So you have a cause and you need to find a champion. And the champion is the person who has that passion, who knows the why that she or he has in forming something. And then what you do is you find other cause specialists in your area that work on that same cause. That way you get a lot of momentum when you're starting the club. And if you find those people who are known in the community for working on that cause and bring them into the club, it provides you a lot of credibility. I know with the Veterans Club, I brought in a former Rotarian who was a general, and that just gave us a lot of credibility when we started approaching veterans in our area. So you found your champion, you found your cause. The next step is to recruit the right members. And we often get asked the question, well, where do you find your members? It's easiest to find the members in your hometown. I was talking to a Rotaractor the other day who started her own Rotaract club, and she started by asking her mom. It sounds funny, but your family and friends, that's where you find your initial members. And you can go to action groups, you can go to other organizations who are working on a similar cause. There's lots of different ways to do it, but start in the area that you know. And do go to groups that are working on the same cause because it's going to be easier to recruit them to your club. And don't forget diversity. The reason we want diversity is because you get better decisions when you have diversity. The Vets Club had all ages, young, old, different colors, different religions, different races. And I'll just give you a short example of what I mean by diversity leads to a better decision. We had those who wanted to be president and president-elect, and those were usually the people who were in action, the people, the 82nd Airborne, those people who are used to taking command. And we had others we had two nurses. We called them affectionately Kathy Army and Kathy Navy because they both had the name Kathy, and that's how we kept them apart. Well, the people who were president, they wanted to grow this club, and they wanted to be the largest club in the district within the first year. And then Kathy Army and Kathy Navy, they wanted to grow slowly by getting to know people, getting to have a good relationship with them, and making sure they fit in with the club. And the right answer was really a combination of both. So if you have just one type of thought, you usually don't get the best decisions. So the most heard objection when you're trying to start a new club is don't take any members from my current club, especially for a president or president-elect. They want to make sure that their club keeps growing and they don't want to lose members. So I wondered how this was actually, if this was a true or not statistic. So I went to Brian King, who's the director of Rotary International Membership Development. And I said, Brian, can you please study all the clubs that have been formed within the last 5 years and tell us how many of those members were new to Rotary and how many already been in Rotary? And it turns out that 88% were new to Rotary. That means only 12% have been in Rotary. Now, some of that 12%, you can argue that they may have left their current club anyways if they're willing to leave to a new club. And then some of those members left Rotary because they didn't find what they were looking for. They didn't see that value proposition anymore, and then they came back. So if you ever have this objection, you can let them know that 88% are new. And this includes passport clubs too. And traditionally, when you form a passport club, you go to your database of pre-existing members, people who have left Rotary, and you call them. So this even includes that number. So now you want to start. So we get asked the question, and we've done it both ways. Do you call 30 or 40 people together and you bring them in, or do you do smaller groups? And what we found out works the best is not to have a large meeting at first. You can do that later when you have your organizational meeting, but to start in smaller groups. This is a few veterans that we first started meeting with, and we found lunch works good. It's not intimidating. It's usually people are, it's pretty convenient time-wise. You pick a place and you meet with them. The reason you want to meet with small groups, because if you meet in small groups, you could ask them what they want in their club. When do they want to meet? Where do they want to meet? What format do they want for their meetings? If you start with a bigger club, they tend to focus on differences, but smaller clubs like to say, okay, Thursday sounds good, night or morning. Night sounds good. And then when you go to the next meeting, they ask you, well, what have people been talking about? You can actually fill them in about the other groups. And remember, it's their passion for the service that unites them. So, a lot of times when you said, hey, we started a veterans club, they say, okay, I'm going to get the teachers together and we're going to form a teachers club. Well, it's not that they're veterans that they got together to serve veterans. And it's really important to know that Rotary won't allow you to start a club and exclude everyone. These cause-based clubs are very inclusive when it comes to membership. We welcome everyone. They're just exclusive when it comes to the service. So this particular club, we have the sheriff of Hennepin County, who's not a veteran, and we have a pastor who's not a veteran, but they're members of this club. Why did they join? Because they both had family members who were veterans. One had an active duty son-in-law, and they wanted to do something to serve veterans. So it's all about the service that's important in cause-based clubs. So if you're getting teachers together, ending illiteracy would be a good cause. The other thing is you have to find out what your members want. All of us on this call, this is a Thursday night. I'm sure there's a holiday party virtually that you could be going to right now. But you're here because you love Rotary. We all bleed blue and gold. But when you're starting a cause-based club, it's very important to put their interest first, the cause first. In the veterans, they were a little bit suspicious when you first come in. Well, why do you want us? Why do you want the veterans? Do you just want us for our money? That kind of thing. But if you let them know we are there to help them form a club and let them use Rotary dollars from grants, use our 115-year great reputation, use us as leadership training, use us for, all kinds of educational opportunities. And then when they start coming together and they start forming a Rotary club and you start saying, hey, Rotary is going to eradicate polio off the face of the earth. Rotary helped form the United Nations. they turn into Rotarians and Rotary becomes eventually their first cause, but they always want to start with their cause first. Then the question we always get asked, where do you get the money to start a club? Well, it takes about $1,500 to start a club. You have to pay $15 per member, unless it's a satellite club, then that's just, you don't have to pay that fee. And there's pull-up banners, bells, gavels, name tag boxes, those kind of things. And it's about $1,500. Well, in the past, where that money came from was usually a sponsor club. I have an alternative that I'll propose to you that we found is better than having a sponsor club. Maybe consider having a sponsored district. So we did in our district is we set aside $8,000 per year to start new clubs. The problem with having just one sponsoring club, that sponsoring club is usually the oldest club in the highest, densest population in the largest city. So, in our area in the Midwest, if we're in Minneapolis, it used to be Minneapolis #9 club, the ninth club started, had the most people, it would start all the clubs. Well, if you're in a place like, let's say, the Black Hills of South Dakota, and you want to start an eco club, you might not have a large club who wants to be a sponsor, but if you have the district be a sponsor, you can actually spread the club growth over your district. We also started something in our district called a pro-growth policy. And what we did, we said is we wanted to show the clubs that are forming that the district has skin in the game. So when I went to talk to the veterans and they say, well, what do Rotary do for us? I can say, we are going to not charge you any district fees for the whole year. Now you might be saying, hey, Tom, they won't have any buy-in if they don't pay dues. Well, they will be paying international dues and they'll be paying whatever club dues that they decide they want to charge, but they won't have district dues for the first year. That's not really a big impact to your districts because if you think about it, when the budgets are made, the DGE, the district governor elect, she or he takes the number of Rotarians and figures a revenue based on that number. If new clubs come in, if you each start 3 clubs with 30 apiece, that's 90 people. That revenue wouldn't be counted for that year anyway. And it's really good money spent because it goes to the bottom line revenue of your district. The other thing is make sure you get in-kind contributions from all the clubs around the area. When we started this particular club, the Veterans Club, we went to the district to the north of us and asked them to donate pull-up banners. We went to the south and asked them to donate a bell, and they put their name on it, the date, the club that was donating it, the date of the charter event. And that was really, really helpful because it got everyone in the district excited. You don't want to just start one club, you want to start several clubs. And if you start a club and get everyone excited because they contributed, you invite them all to the charter night event, then they will want to join their own clubs and you'll just get this momentum, the wind behind your sails, and you'll be starting clubs and your district will be growing. So then you'll get to a point where you need to hold the organizational meeting. Now, it's probably good to choose a new place and let them choose the place. Don't choose the hotel if you don't want to, of where your club meets, because remember, this is their club, it's a different club, and you want to do things differently. There's lots of free locations. You can do it in a park, you could do it in a restaurant in their back room. Ours took place in the basement of a church because it happened to be that the pastor who was joining the club, it was his church and they had a free room. And of course, Rotary is non-religious, but there's lots of organizations, places of worship that allow you to use their free space. You're going to have to choose 6 officers, let them choose the officers, and it's really good to have a PowerPoint for a couple of reasons. One, it'll keep you organized as you present, you won't miss any points. And second of all, it's really nice for them to see how a Rotary meeting is run. Now, of course, you might want to put an invocation. They might not like that. There might be things that they tweak, but to have them have a PowerPoint to start with, they always really like that. So then we file the paperwork, and this is not boring. A lot of times people say, I don't want to start a club because I don't want to file the paperwork. There's only 4 things that you have to file in order to get a club started. I know there's 5 there, but one of these we need to discuss, but you don't need to file it. So the first thing when starting a Rotary Club is you have to file an application. There's a simple form. It's called 808A. It's a fillable PDF, and it's just 4 pages. And really only 3 pages is information. The last page is a page that you fill out for each of your members that are joining. Addresses, phone numbers. Are they a Rotarian? What's the Rotarian number? Do they want to receive their Rotary magazine in paper or electronically? Now there's you fill out one form for a regular club or a passport club, and there's a different form for Rotary clubs and satellite clubs. So a lot of clubs want to actually file with the Secretary of State's office and have a corporation or a filed entity. You don't have to do this. Most state laws actually allow, I guess all state laws, allow individuals to associate and have an organization without filing. So why do people file with their Secretary of State's office? A lot of times they actually want to be able to file an SSN, an SS4 to get an EIN so they can get a bank account. But you can get a bank account other ways too. If you are going to file an organization, make sure you have an attorney to give their services pro bono, not charge you from your clubs. And don't do this until after the entity is formed, because a lot of folks, they file this first, and then when they go to club and district support, the name gets tweaked a little bit. Maybe they add a comma state USA, or they change the name because they think it's confusing. You don't have to go back to the Secretary of State's office and change the name again. So wait until after. Don't put up barriers to starting your club. Start your club, and then you could document this after. There are 6 officers that you have to choose, and it's really not hard to find the first 5, but the hard one to find is the Rotary Foundation Chair. I think sometimes people would rather give an organ than ask people for money. But one will come, and you will find that person, and she or he will be a good one. It's good to have someone who has been a former Rotarian, if you have a former Rotarian joining the new club, because that person will understand a little bit of how the Rotary Foundation works and can explain it to others. This document, you don't have to file, and please don't file. When you fill out your application, you sign an affidavit at the bottom saying that you will follow the rules and follow the standard form of constitution for a club. Well, it turns out, and learn from my mistake, I used to draft these and I would file them, and CDS, sorry to use acronyms, but club and district support, they would take mine, they would compare it to their form, and they would reject it. After talking to them, I found out that they actually have a blank form club constitution that says Constitution of the Rotary Club of, and they have a blank. So if you don't send this into them, they'll actually write your club name in it when they get the right club name and you file your application. So you don't even have to worry about filing, and don't. But the bylaws you want to make sure fit for your club. Now, the everyday things that you do, that's more policy or procedure. You could put those in a separate manual. The bylaws are major things, like how you elect your officers, what their duties are. And what's an example? Here's a picture of what this particular club did that was unique to bylaws. But a lot of clubs, the last 2 that we formed, the End Human Trafficking and the Empowering Women, they have decided that they want their first president to serve 2-year terms so that they get the club up and going before a new president comes in. So that's just an example of why you might want to have a different bylaws than the standard bylaws. So the last page that I was telling you about that you fill out with your club members, and please fill it out as it comes in. It's much easier to fill it out when it comes in than to wait till everybody signs up and then fill it out. But this has gotten really easier because now you don't have to fill out that 4th page. Club and district support will actually, if you ask them for it or we can get it for you, will give you an Excel spreadsheet, and you could do all of that on this spreadsheet. And again, when I joined my first club, I was so excited about getting people in. I waited till I got them all in before I filled this out. And then my friend had to read to me for 2.5 hours as I typed it in. It's much better to keep that list filled out. I see Russ smiling. He knows what I'm talking about. Because when you're thinking about your members and you're thinking about who came in, you'll think, Russ has got a spouse. I can have that person join. So you just thinking about it helps you as you go along. Okay, paying has also gotten easier. You have to pay $15 per person, and it used to be that you have to send in a check, but since COVID, they now take a credit card. So if your district has a credit card, you could just call it in. The key with payment is you got to make sure that your payment matches the exact numbers that you fill out on that Excel spreadsheet. When we were doing this club, we had about 45 members, and then you'll find out when you go through a dry spell, and as soon as you charter, people start hearing about it more and more people want to join. Charter with the number that you filled your application out. Don't keep adding them in, because if your spreadsheet has 48 members and your check is 45, they'll make you start the whole process over again. They're great people. It's just they have to do what they have to do. Okay, now this is a very, very important step. It's a step that you might think you want to skip because you worked real hard. You started a club, like we started the Veterans Club, and it's easy to say, okay, I started my club, I'm going to take a break. No, you have to have a charter night. Why do I say you have to have a charter night? It's really important to your members. They have been working hard to get this club started, and it's a great time for them to bring their family members in too. Did you ever wonder why, take India, for example, when they have a district conference, they literally have thousands of people come. And here in North America, we might get 100 people to come to a district conference. It's because they involve their families. And really involving the families, that's really low hanging fruit because might be your next new members that join. And plus, a lot of us, when we're on our call here, my wife's probably at home wondering, why isn't he home for dinner again? He's at one of those Rotary meetings, right? But if they are part of it now, actually, my wife is in a different Rotary club and she's at our holiday party, so she understands. But what I'm saying is, you want to involve as many people, and reaching out in the community. One of the best times to do it is when you're chartering. And that's true whether it's in person like this one was, or whether it's virtual. You still want to give them a chance to celebrate. You want to recognize them. And it gives you a chance to say, okay, we're going to charter in 2 weeks. If you want to be a charter member, don't wait till 2 weeks from now because you'll just be a regular member. But if you want to be a charter member and get the charter member certificate and the charter member pin, go ahead and do that. And make sure you invite the newspaper and the television. And some will come if you invite them. And then usually that leads, you get an article published, then more people hear about it, and you get it in a larger paper. Sometimes it gets picked up by a national inspiration column, those kind of things. And sometimes, the television stations pick up. And why is that important? Because it gets your club excited. They can tell their friends about it, but also because more people hear about it and more people join your club. It's interesting because you'll find with these cause-based clubs, at least in our district, the 3 that we started last year, they're 3 of the 4 clubs that are growing faster than any other clubs. So sometimes the new clubs just have energy and they grow. Then you got to remember, when to keep them involved and keep them in the club, you got to have service projects. But remember, they're going to want to do service projects that actually match the cause of why they joined. So if you join a veterans club, you're joining to serve veterans. So they might partner up with other clubs. This club partners up with our Brooklyn Park Club, and they write cards together for active military because that's part of being a service to veterans. They do blood drives even with other clubs because blood drives are good for veterans. Within a few weeks of forming, we actually had a grant management seminar for them, and they actually got $20,000 for a grant to rebuild. That's a homeless vet's home behind them. They rebuilt the first floor to make it a game room. There's foosball, video games, poker, pool, that kind of thing, because camaraderie is very important to veterans, because they want to prevent suicide. Next year, they're going to do another building, another first floor, and they're going to make it for conferencing to teach people, veterans coming back, how to get civilian jobs and how to learn the language of business. And then they're planning 3 years out to do a telemedicine one. And it's great dealing with new clubs because they do things that we wouldn't do. They went to the Elks Club and got a couple $1,000s from them because they didn't know you don't ask Elks Club for money. So just make sure that it fits with their cause. Okay, really quickly, I picked 3 of our newest clubs to tell you one lesson each. It'll be less than a minute apiece of what we learned, so you don't make the mistakes we learned, so it'll be easier for you. Twin Cities Eco Club. What we learned from this club is you have to go in with both feet, and you have to get momentum, and you have to get it done. You don't want to wait 3 or 4 years to start a club, because in this club we would get a couple members, then it would die down for a couple months. We'd get a couple more, then 1 or 2 of the first members would fall off. Get them going, get their partners in there, call the action groups, call your districts by you, talk to your friends at church, neighbors, school, parents of your school children, whoever you can think of. Now, what we learned from this club is that anybody can start a cause-based club. We started this club in Minnesota, and it's the first veterans club in the world. We don't have an active military base in Minnesota. I'm not a veteran. So if Gump can do it, any of you can do it. And that's what you should take away from this. It's not hard to do. And there's people on this call, your independent club advocates. Bill can help you. Your assistant Rotary coordinators can help you. There's all kinds of help. When we started the Human Trafficking Club, what we found out is you have to reach out into the community. 3 weeks after this club's formed, I'm on a meeting and we have a new member from Turkey. And I was thinking, that's cool. We have people from all over the world, but we don't have anyone from Turkey. As soon as I finished that meeting, I got an email from Mark Maloney, who's our immediate international president. And he said, Tom, that was my sister that you guys inducted today into your club. I've been trying to get her to join Rotary for over 40 years. Well, why didn't she join? We just didn't have a club that fit her needs. So all those ideas that you guys are thinking of now, and I know you're thinking of them, go and start those clubs, because when you do, it's just going to be a great feeling. You're going to be getting all kinds of people in the Rotary that we haven't did before. So I get asked, what do all these clubs have in common that we started, the cause-based clubs? Well, one, there's a cause and there's a champion for that cause. Two, there's friendship. People want to be with their friends and they want to serve, but they want to serve with their friends and they want to serve for a particular area that they're passionate about. It all started with friends and family, and they all had its support from either a club or a district. So the other question we get asked a lot is, what are the easiest, quickest clubs to start? Because we all want our membership to grow. And I know all of you, whether it be a district membership chair, assistant Rotary coordinator, or Bill as coordinator, we all want to grow. So what are the easiest ones to do? Veterans Club and Human Trafficking Club. And we hear of these starting all over the world. And I wonder, why are they starting now and they hadn't started before? Because it's now been proven that it can be done. So if Mary wants to go out and she wants to form a literacy club, she can say, hey, there's already one been done. You could call them up. You could go to their meetings. You could find out, what their brochure looks like. I put autism down there because we're working on one now. Environmental clubs are huge. We're helping 2 in Australia right now. There's one on the West Coast. We already mentioned literacy club. Clubs focusing on water is obvious because there's lots of us who go to Guatemala, Honduras, and do water projects. And there's action groups and there's other organizations working on it. Why not form a Rotary Club and have it be the umbrella organization for the other ones? Bring them together. Ending homelessness is a club that we're helping start in Australia. Now, this is just the few that I could fit on the slide that seem to be coming up a lot, but any cause that you think of, you can start a club around it. You're not allowed to start political clubs, just like a regular Rotary Club. There's a policy that says you can't push a political issue, you can't push a religious denomination, but any kind of cause where people can work together, you can start a club like that. We can help you. So now is the best part of the night because we can answer the questions. So I want to hear any questions you have and I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, Tom, I have a question right away here.
Yes,
I've
sir.
been answering a few questions as we've gone along, but I've got one right here from Jean-Louis. Now it's disappeared because, oh no, there it is. Jean-Louis is in Quebec, and they have a military base in Canada, in Quebec there, with 4,000 soldiers. They have tried to get a veterans club started, but they ran into problems and it didn't work because it was explained to them that a club with veterans mixed with on-duty military is difficult. They found that an officer would not necessarily or could not understand why a non-officer could be the president of the club when there was an officer in the club. Do you have on-duty personnel in the Veterans Club, or because it's not for veterans, it's to help veterans, right? Did you run into that?
We didn't run into it, but the way we started our club is we actually had an outside facilitator, and we got them all together in the larger meeting. We had about 40 people there, and we asked them what was important to them. And it was interesting how they came up. It was like the group, even though they came from different branches of the service, when somebody would say something, everyone was nodding their head and they were in agreement. And what they came up with, the 3 points, and it was interesting because they didn't really know what Rotary's major points are, but they really matched well. They wanted to do camaraderie because they were afraid that when you leave the service, you don't have somebody watching your back. They wanted to do service and they wanted to work towards peace. And I never even thought about that, but they said the reason they joined the service is because eventually they want the world to be peaceful. Now, what you could do in a situation like that, you could have flexibility by having a satellite club of officers, and then you could have a regular club of active military, or you can do it vice versa. And maybe the best way to do it is start with the retired people. Because if you have 4,000 active at the base, there's probably a lot of retired folks around there. Start with them and see how they can serve the active, and then eventually it'll probably take off. And you know, if you want to start with 8 of them, you could have a little satellite club that can zoom in to our club here in Minnesota and be a satellite club of ours until you build it to 20. We also started one in Houston, and they have a real good club down there too. You could do the same thing there. Because so many times it's like, well, how do we start? If they can see it actually going, then sometimes it's easier for them to grow themselves. Because really, you don't have to find all 20 yourself. You can let them bring in their own friends to do it.
Thanks, Tom. Another one from District Governor Carol Tickleman out here in 5050. Are these cause-based clubs better in a traditional format or an e-club format?
Classmate Carol, that's an excellent question. I'm really glad that you asked it. And it really depends on what the club is. And I've seen it work both ways. You know, the Veterans Club, they like to get together in person. Now during COVID, they're doing electronically. But the End Human Trafficking Club, and I was on their meeting this morning, they have about 45 members, and they have 3 different professionals. So there's a lot of executive directors in the club that also for their day job work on this issue, and they want to be with other people to exchange deals. So one may be working with children who are being trafficked. One is a surgeon who they actually brand some of these victims, and so she offers free surgical work to remove the branding when they're out of that situation. So they only meet electronically. Now they all do different. It's important that they actually do service projects, and some of those service projects could be electronic, but a lot of times for that club, they'll try to get products for people who are in a situation where they're going to a shelter or something to get out of an abusive relationship. But it's important for them to have activities. But just because you have members all over the world doesn't mean that they can't be doing similar activities and working on the same thing. You could do blood drive on the same day in 3 different areas. So it's really what the club wants to do. And I think the important thing, Carol, is we got to let them decide, because we might not like the name of their, like, End Human Trafficking. I didn't really like that name. I know this is being recorded because I thought that's an audacious goal. Can it really be reached? But to them, it was important that that be the goal, to end it, not just make awareness of it, not just to curb it, but to end it. And Carol, let us know if you need help, and we'll be glad to help you. But what kind of club are you starting?
Well, we're just in discussion phases at the moment. Actually, we do have a club that's ready to charter, and it's going to be more a traditional club.
Great. And you know, you could always, when Carol and I went to IA, there was an exercise where they passed out Rotary magazines, and we cut little pictures out, and we had people come up with, if you had a club, when would it meet, and how would it meet, and how many days would it meet, and what would your name be? And I did that same thing at our pets, and I collected all those, and I can get that information to Carol. But it just getting people to think about it. You'd be surprised on all the great ideas they come up with, and I'm sure there's a lot of great ideas around the screen tonight.
A comment from Russ. Russ is a veteran, and he basically, in response to Jean-Louis' question, he's noticed that there are issues with active duty officers and NCOs, but not active duty officers and not active duty officers. So you may want to have an active duty satellite with looking after a certain portion of Veterans Affairs and vice versa. Question from Kevin: do you have a district team or a committee that focuses on starting new clubs?
We do. And we also, in our zone, what we do in our zone is we have a team that we call Project Phoenix 223, because it's rising up of the ashes. And there's 2 different paired zones together and 23 districts altogether. And 223 is the date that Rotary was founded. But what we did in this group is we actually picked a district champion for every one of the 23 districts. And they focus on doing nothing but forming clubs, because your district membership chair, and actually Lloyd Campbell on the call is ours for our district. He's focusing, he helps new clubs, but a lot of times district membership chairs, and you all know this, and assistant Rotary coordinators, you're worried about the clubs, you're worrying about retention, you're worrying about making those clubs vibrant and bringing in new members to those existing clubs. And those are 2 different ways to grow Rotary, but the third is starting new clubs. But you need someone to think independently of that, because there's so many things going on. And I'll tell you, the work that you guys do as assistant Rotary coordinators and district membership chairs, it's a hard job, because changing a club time or place or a format is hard to do, because you have to change a culture. And culture, you have to change people. And changing people, we all know, is not easy. Starting a new club is actually easier, because you just take the culture that they have and they just do what they want to do, and you don't have to change anything. And it's all important. We have to do all of it. But thank you for that question.
A question from Margaret Walton. Do cause-based clubs have diverse programs, or do they focus solely on their cause?
That's a very good question. And most of the times they focus on their cause, but that doesn't mean that they can't do other projects with other clubs that are similar cause. We had our Veterans Club just about 2 months ago. They were working on a project where they were rebuilding a Veterans Memorial that was another club's project. So you'll see, like in my area, in my district, we always had an annual Veterans Luncheon. Well, now the Veterans Club has taken over that, but all the clubs come to it. So they are, and it depends on the club too. And it depends, all the clubs are different, but I'd say most of the time they join the club to focus on that issue. And sometimes they were going to leave Rotary. I mean, that's actually how our End Human Trafficking Club got started. We didn't say, hey, let's start this. We had a district-wide initiative that spread to the district to the north and south of us. We had champions in every club, and they would do things together, but they would go to their clubs and say, I want to have a speaker against end human trafficking. And they'd have one speaker, one program, but then that club didn't want to do it for a whole nother year, because we have great water projects, we have great literacy projects. So the person who's head of that initiative, she was going to quit. And Lloyd and I talked to her and said, stay, form your own club. And she said, well, that's too hard. I said, we'll help you. She said, okay, you do the work, we'll do it. Well, she did most of the work, but she needed to know that she had help and that there were people there to help her and that it can be done. I mean, sometimes it's in a district, just getting the first one started, then everyone's like, wow, if Tom could do that, I could do that. So.
I like the way you keep throwing that out there. If Tom could do that, I could do that. That's good. A comment from Mary Turner in 5360, which is Southern Alberta. If 5360 has a dedicated group working with starting and supporting new clubs. So well done. Let's, I hope we hear more of that coming around. Dennison, who's a Rotaractor, I agree with the new Rotaract Club without a host club. 90 members are new that were never part of Rotary before. 90% of members new.
That is wonderful.
That's great news. That's great news. Eddie, if we have no further questions, I know some of you are in the snow belt out in the eastern United States, and are probably still suffering from that nor'easter. So if there are no further questions, I would like to thank Tom sincerely for taking the time out. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. Great meeting. I got one comment on there earlier. One of our participants said, learned more tonight on this meeting than any other meeting they've attended in the most recent past. So that's great news. Congratulations to everyone who started new clubs. Thank you all to my assistant Rotary coordinators who support me, and we won't be having another ARC meeting now until the new year, so please allow me to wish you all a very happy Christmas, joyous Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah. Take care, stay safe. We'll see you all in the new year.